the game's coming thick and fast. London Irish this weekend, but let's just reflect on the last 2 weeks. You've spoken a lot about how proud you've been of the players and the work, the fight that they've been showing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny in a coaching perspective. I know some people listen to this and they go, that doesn't make any sense. But from a pride in your players' attitudes and dealing with scenarios over the last 2 weeks, I've been really proud of the lads. I've really come away and I've rewatched the games, and I've really had a feeling that they've got something special about them. And more than when earlier this year we put in a couple of quite, I'm not going to say odd performances, a couple of performances that were so dominant and almost so easy, and we just kind of took control of games, and there's 20 minutes to go and you've won and you can roll your bench on and everything's fine. Do you know what I mean? They're great, and obviously it's great to sit there and watch games like that. But the truth is, when you review certain scenarios, what you want to have is a deep-rooted feeling that your players will stand and fight for each other, and it means something to them. And that only really happens when it gets tough and it gets tight and it gets edgy and nervy. And we've been that for the last 2 weeks. I know we have. We didn't perform great against Wasps and Bristol. The lads are aware that people will see those as two of our biggest rivals this season. Obviously, we've lost those games. Is it not right at Exeter? And all the little things that started to get talked about. Even though we were dealing with some difficult scenarios then, and we knew we were around training, and we'd had the COVID thing, and obviously European game cancelled, which dented us a little bit, and I don't mind saying that. And then international rest periods, which we kind of got in there pre-Europe, and then Europe cancelled. All the kind of stuff we knew we were dealing with. And did we do it as well as we could have done? No, because I still think we could have played better against Wasps and Bristol, but we were dealing with some things. And I think that kind of allowed us to have that 3-week break really between games, where we actually had longer than we had off in pre-season. We had a longer preparation time for Worcester. We kind of got some good things out in the open and talked about what this season should be like, and kind of cleared our heads about last season, which was going to be important. And really, I think we almost started from scratch against Worcester, which meant it was going to be like it was. It was going to be like a first game of the season where, it didn't feel brilliant, it didn't feel great. I mean, people do need to remember we won a double last season, and our first game of that season was here against Harlequins, and we only just won. We went on to have a good season that season. We only just won. It can be a bit scratchy at the start of the season, and that's what it feels like. It feels like it's a little bit scratchy, but we've got some great foundations, which means we've got a group of lads who've worked very hard on the fit, and they're prepared to fight for each other and scrap. And if anybody thinks that we haven't got a team that's prepared to fight, and they watch the Newcastle hooker tap just for half time in what would have been an absolutely crucial area of the game if they'd have scored then, and he doesn't get anywhere near the try line because the guys are absolutely committed to getting off the line and making a stop tackle there, that shows you the qualities this team have got. Was it perfect? Of course it wasn't. I watched Joe Simmons drop the ball, I watched Ali Devoto drop the ball, I watched Faco Cordero throw the ball into touch. I watched his missed passes on the outside, and there was simple 2-ons. I saw all those things. But I also saw us throw ourselves around in defence, throw ourselves into collisions, work extremely hard at scrum and maul, watched a young tight head like Marcus Street fight for absolutely everything all the way through the game, watching Richard Capstick grow, watching some of our senior players look at each other and kind of demand that they weren't going to concede tries and demand that they were going to make the game a win. Those things, those qualities, they're the ones you're really proud of. And I think we've got some really good foundation elements in place that will allow us to work very hard through this season, particularly this next 8-week period. And if we can come out of this period we're in and about where we want to be, and we get this whole group back together in improving conditions, everyone feeling good about themselves, everyone have kind of got international kind of stuff period out of the way and that bit's dealt with, I think we can really look forward to an exciting last third of the season. Truth is, we're in the dogfight part of the season now, which is variable conditions, players coming and going, the odd injury, but you just keep collecting points, and we've done that really well the last 2 weeks. We've shown some really good qualities. Two tough away games on rubber crumb, which is a different surface. You're training on soft pitches, then you go and play on a firm pitch. You got a 7-hour bus journey up to Newcastle, and you wake up and it's snowing, and the pitch, and it's windy and it's cold, like properly cold for the first time this season. What do? You turn up and you win the game. That's okay. That's okay. I'm okay with that. That doesn't mean we're not demanding a lot of the players, because we are. We're demanding a hell of a lot of the players at the moment. We're expecting more from them, better from them. We want more detail. We want more accuracy. We're pushing for it in every training session. We're demanding every training session, and it will come because the lads know it themselves and they're working very hard.
London Irish this weekend. They're a much different London Irish to last time in the Premiership. And when you look at their squad, Rob, they are not really hit by international call-ups. They've got a very, well, I think the stat was the other week, the most experienced international pack of forwards at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's a decent unit.
Oh yeah, they're a good side. And again, it's not one of those games where you look at it and go, oh, this should just be a standard win. It shouldn't be. London Irish beat us the last time they came here. I know we were changed up side that day, but they're very changed up from that day as well. They're on a good run of form. They're confident about how they're playing. We're again going to have to be able to dig in and fight and scrap for everything. And I don't mind telling you now, if we come away with another, 15-6 win or whatever it might need to be, I'll be delighted, because that's what it's about at the moment. If we can stand and fight and work and work and work, that's what builds the foundations for later in the season. The teams that are working the hardest now will be the teams that come through the strongest at the end. It's not necessarily the teams that are winning at the moment, it's the teams that work the hardest. And that's why our biggest driver and our biggest factor that we are pushing with the players is where can you take your work rate to in this game? This week, where can you take your work rate to? Can you produce something you haven't produced before? And whichever way you do it, whether it's the quality of how you play, whether it's the accuracy of how you play, whether it's the distance you can cover, whether it's the training effect you can get to, whatever it is, can you create a single best performance today? Because the truth is, when you watch teams that double up trophies or are successful over periods of time, how do they do it? You look at the record books and you see key players having record seasons the year after they've won something, and it drives the team to a new record and it drives the team to a new trophy. And that's what we're talking about with our players. We want guys to have their best ever seasons this season by the end of it. Now that might not be in the way people think. It might not be a try scoring record, or it might not be some amazing game of rugby, but it might be that all through this season they've hit better training scores, they're lifting better in the gym, they're hitting record speeds, whatever it might be. You try and find some way to achieve a personal best, and all those things contributed will make you a better team, and that's what we've got to decide to be, as a better team.
It's a boost for you, not necessarily for himself, but Harry Williams coming back into the mix this week. Are you going to have a frustrated guy that wants to come back and prove a point, do you feel?
I don't think Harry needs to prove a point to anybody, if I'm honest with you, because we see it in his performances all the time. I watched his performances last season, and personally I watched him outplay and outperform a lot of guys who've been picked above him over the last 2 or 3 years. But that's my opinion, and that doesn't necessarily count. Well, it doesn't count for anything. So it doesn't count for anything in international selection. So that I don't, and I completely understand that, and I don't think there's any reason why my opinion should stand. But there is a reality that we don't really deal with a frustrated guy when Harry comes back. We just deal with a guy who wants to play really well and he wants to win games of rugby, and that's what it should be about. Harry is a great character. Every time he's been released from an international camp, first thing he does when I phone him up, ask how he is, and I nearly always phone him to just see where he is mentally and physically and whether he feels he's ready to play. And every single time, before I can even ask him, he tells me, I'm available and I want to play. And sometimes he'll have one day, he'll have like the team run, prep and play. Other times, like this week, he's got pretty much the full training week. But every time the answer's the same: look, I'm ready to play. I want to play. That's the kind of attitude you want to hear from all your players. And to be fair, it was really interesting. It was a really interesting thing for me to watch, because I watched the Scotland-England game, and the two standout performers I think most people will have talked about were Stuart Hogg and Johnny Gray. And isn't it interesting that they were the two guys who returned and played? Tom Francis returned and played, and he played in the winning side as well, and managed to put a real long shift in for a tighter prop. The guys who actually got back and played and said to me when I asked them how do they feel about it, no, want to play, we need the rugby, we haven't played much rugby, look how it benefited them. And I think that shows that club rugby and Premiership rugby is not the worst preparation for international rugby, because these lads, they do need to play, and they haven't played that much rugby. And for me, when you guys want to get back and play, it makes what Exeter Chiefs what they're all about, really. It's why we've been successful, because the lads want to play rugby.
The other positives from last weekend, Alex Cuthbert and Stu Townsend coming back. Both of those have had long spells on the sideline for whatever reason, but both of them really added something last week. Yeah,
and again, you can just tell they know what it's like. How do you get into a team? Well, when the coaches watch training, you see the guys who are adding the vibrancy and the energy and the pace and the enthusiasm to training. And I can say without doubt, those two guys over the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've been flying around in training. You know, you can hear them barking and talking and energising whichever group or whichever team they're in, and you're watching them going, I can't leave this guy out for much longer. And that's what you want from all the players. And I remind all the guys about it. You know, if you have any qualms about why you're not getting selected, think about how you're training, because you can make us not leave you out. And it's not like you have quite a good training week. You have a couple of training weeks where all the coaches are just looking at you saying, how can we leave this guy out for another week? And that's what those two have done. And then it showed because they were sharp and they were ready when they were on the field. You know, I think Alex I don't think he made one mistake. I don't think he made one error in that game, in a game where we did make quite a lot of errors, particularly across our back line. And on top of not making errors, he also had some really key moments. He had some key momentum carries for us. He had a magnificent kind of kick, chase and field in a chase that gave us momentum, which we then managed to blow on the other wing. And then he scores a great try. You know, you can't ask more from someone coming back into your team and doing that. And Stu, to be honest, we probably should have got him on a little bit quicker, but he looked real sharp. And, you know, that's all you can ask. You ask these guys to train hard, show you they should be in the team. When they do, you pick them. And it shouldn't be a surprise when they play well because they've trained like that. And that's the key. That's the key to getting back into any team.